I'm joined with Keith Neumeyer from First Majestic. Keith, it's great to see you again.
Great seeing you again, Steve.
So let's start off with silver prices. Since this time last year, silver has made some pretty big moves. I'm hoping you're going to tell me that there's more to come. What's going through your head right now when you're thinking about silver?
Well, none of us have crystal balls, of course, but silver is just catching up. It's got still a long ways to go. Gold's been sticking in at the $3,300 range now for a good, couple of quarters. And now the market's starting to say, hey, look, what can we buy other than gold? And silver is the obvious investment. Not only do we have, severe supply demand fundamentals where we've got 5 years of current or 5 years in a row of deficits. It's not going to turn around. There's no big silver mines coming online. There's no reason that production's going to increase. Production from the miners has been flat for, the last decade, and it's not going to change. And as long as demand continually goes up, I think there's going to be a continual rush in the silver space.
Now, historically, when gold does run, silver usually does follow. Now, I know we don't have crystal balls here, but I kind of look at what's happening with silver pricing, and I wonder when we talk about these supply deficits that we currently have, and we think about sort of the pricing, is there a level that if silver chews through that we might actually see it go ballistic?
Well, I think 38 is the magic number. Think about historically how silver has moved. Silver's only been above $30 three times in our lifetime. The last time it was in 2020, and prior to that it was 2011. Prior to that was 1979, 80. And then both of those prior moves were quite short-lived. We've now had silver over $30 for a good length of time here, and it's showing a really nice, strong base. It's attempted to get to 37 a couple of times. It broke through there briefly just last week. Of course, was sold down. But, once it gets through that on a consistent basis, it's going to go. And there's really no lid. Your next lid after 38 is really $50.
Before, when we chatted, you made a comment to me that really resonated with me, which was about how the majors weren't really buying into the current prices of precious metals because of the lack of M&A activity. Now, since you made those comments to me, we actually have seen M&A activity pick up. And if you go to our YouTube channel, we break down a lot of these transactions, and almost seems like we're doing one every day. Do you think that the majors are now starting to buy into it?
Well, we're seeing, in the silver space, it's getting quite a bit smaller. We took out Gatos in January of this year, big chunky asset, 102,000 hectare land package, 10 million ounce producer. They're rare. They're just not around. And then Corp, of course, took out Silvercrest, another 10 million ounce producer. And then MAG just took out, or Pan American just took out MAG. So how many are left? In the North American space, publicly traded silver companies, there's really only three big ones. And outside of that, for us, from an M&A perspective, we own a lot of juniors, and I personally own juniors myself. So, I follow that space a lot, the exploration space or the development space. But, we're First Majestic. We're a big company. We'll produce over 30 million ounces of silver this year. And for us to go buy, a two or 3 million ounce producer, it just doesn't make a lot of sense for us. So we need to go find another 10 million ounce producer.
Do you almost have to focus on discovery at this point to find that?
Well, internal discovery for sure. And it's a good use of our capital. We're doing a $45 million exploration program this year. We currently have 28 drill rigs active within the company. So we're doing about 250,000 meters of drilling this year. And we've had two major discoveries in the last 12 months at one of our mines. And, that's a great use of capital. For us to go buy that, it would cost quite a lot more than it would for us to discover it.
It's funny too. I remember when the very first time we chatted, this was back in the days, so I probably shouldn't use the word on YouTube, but we were all kind of locked up in our houses doing interviews over Zoom. And I remember we were looking at First Majestic, kind of new to the space, and just trying to wrap our head around where First Majestic's future resources were going to come from. And you told us that they were going to come from discoveries on the properties you already had. And since then, we've seen some pretty major drill hits. And it seems like you guys are executing that strategy for exactly as you said.
Yeah, well, when we bought Santa Elena back in 2015, it produced 2.5 million ounces of silver equivalent that year, and it had a mine life of 8 years. And today, or last year, it produced 10 million ounces of silver and it's still got an 8-year mine life. So how does that work out? Because of drilling, successful drilling. So for every ounce of silver we mine, we actually find more than we're actually mining. So the life of mine stays relatively stable or increases as production increases. So we're pulling 10 million ounces of silver out of the ground, an equivalency basis at Santa Elena, and we're adding as many ounces as we mine
And
every year.
unlike most exploration companies you can invest in, you guys are actually generating the cash flow to cover that, as opposed to having to keep going and diluting and diluting and diluting.
Right. And our just to that point, our cash balance today is the largest it's ever been in the company's history. As a CEO, I've been running this company for 22 years. And, it's always been a struggle. Where are we going to get our next dollar from? Where do we, any extra money we have, should we expand this mill? Should we, do a little bit more development there? Should we, do some more exploration there? It's always a bit of a, a game, of dollars, and you always have to manage your treasury. Today, we're at quite a unique position where, we could expand development, expand exploration programs, and we're actually adding cash at the same time with these elevated investments that we're currently making. We're still adding money to the bank.
So I know First Majestic has a history of you guys do a major acquisition every 3 years. Gatos is now, I guess it was announced about a
September last year.
September last year. Are you guys already doing your homework on that next one?
Well, if we were, I couldn't tell you, but like we know the silver space probably as good or better than anyone. Being in the silver space for over 20 years as I have been, so we own footholds in a number of juniors. I watch the space extremely well, and who knows what the next M&A transaction is going to be, but you hit it on the head. Every 3 years it seems that we're going to do something, and we'll have to find that next big asset. Maybe it's being developed right now. We just in the early stages.
So let's talk about that last acquisition, Gatos. How's that going? What can you tell us?
It's going very well. There was it was such a clean asset, right? We didn't have to do a lot to it. Quite unlike some of the other assets we purchased in the past, where they were, required capital, or there was issues at the mine or issues at the mill. We're a good turnaround artist, and that's what we've done for 20 years. But in this case, we didn't have to do anything. This mill is a $350 million brand new mill with 10-year mine life already walking into it. We didn't have to really do much. We've actually reduced our exploration programs at Los Gatos, just because it doesn't need the exploration. It's already got a 10-year mine life, and it's producing 13 million ounces a year. And we're going to be expanding the mill a little bit to maintain those types of levels over the next couple of years. But it's a great asset, and to have a big cornerstone asset like that in our portfolio. And we're lucky, at First Majestic, we've got 3 core, district scale assets with Santa Elena, 102,000 hectares, Los Gatos at 103,000 hectares, and San Dimas at 75,000 hectares. These are huge projects, huge properties. It'll take decades and decades to explore them, if they will ever get explored.
So you guys just put out your Q2 earnings. What can you tell us there?
Not Q2 earnings, Q2 production.
Okay.
It's just gone out, and increase over Q1. Good increases over year compared to 2024. See the numbers. Go have a look at the news release. But I think the most significant things that I look at is really the assets are still growing. San Dimas was up, Los Gatos was up, Santa Elena's up. All within budget or slightly over budget. So we're on track to meet our guidance. We've actually updated our guidance as well. We increased our guidance slightly for the back half of 2025, which is obviously a nice thing to do, increasing guidance. So we expect to, come in at about 31, 32 maybe silver equivalent ounces. So about 55% of that's pure silver, 35% of that's gold, and the rest is in the form of lead and zinc.
Any updates you can give us on the first mint?
Yeah, no, it's fun. We're releasing new products every quarter. We just released a new Vegas coin, and we just also released a series of Zodiac coins as well. Yeah, sales are going great, and it's really nice to be able to supply that metal to the market, because under the old system that we were using, all our metals always come from Mexico. We've always put it through refineries in the United States. We've always used mints within the U.S. to produce our products since 2008. But I got quite frustrated in 2003 where the mints just wouldn't give us the product that our customers were demanding. So you would go onto our website and you see sold out, sold out, sold out. And, people are saying, why don't, you're a silver company. How can you sell out of your silver? So I said, okay, fine. So we decided to open our own mint up. And, it's a new business. We're not a minting company. We're a mining company. So we had to hire the right people, get the equipment. And it was a bit of a learning curve for us, but we're now a year into it and it's making good money.
All right, Keith, last question for you. If I'm an investor watching or I have First Majestic on my watch list and I'm trying to figure out if I want to hop in, what am I expecting out of the company over the remainder of the year?
Well, I look at the share price and it has improved, about 30% or so year to date, which is nice to see, but it's still highly undervalued. Last time silver was at these prices, $30+ silver, our stock was $25 a share. And the company was half the size back then. And we're now double the size, cash flowing, profitable, and our stock is still, I think, far back from where it should be. I know it's the mining sector and it takes time for that money to come down to our level. You got the big companies like the Nikos and the Newmonts, they run first. Then you get the mid-tiers that they start to move. And a lot of institutions out there are kicking the tires. We've had new investors coming in, which is nice to see. And now the juniors are starting to get bid up as well. And that shows you there's some life behind this market. So I think we're going to have another 10-year bull run here. We had from 2002 to 2012, we had a great market. A lot of people did very well during that 10-year period. It ended quite abruptly, unfortunately. But I think we're at the early stages of another 10-year bull market.
All right, well, Keith, it's always a pleasure when you sit down with us. I know our audience loves when you hop on here. So thanks for doing this, and let's do this again soon.
Yeah, and I love your analysis when you're doing looking at other companies. I watch your videos all the time, and when you're grinding through news releases and analyzing them for your audience, I think that's a great thing to do, and I encourage you to keep doing that.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate First Majestic. I said this in one of our other videos, but you guys are a sponsor of the deep dive, and I sincerely appreciate that all that content that we make is because companies like First Majestic sponsor us. So that's something that I sincerely thank you for, and I know that our audience does as well.
Well, we're happy to support you, and that'll continue.